Today is Saturday, May 13th, 2017, and today we got to talk about Jeff Sessions and his stance about being very hard on drugs. Now, this has caused a lot of people to react in different ways. Many of you may disagree with what I'm about to say here, but before we get into all of that, I just want to tee up what's going on and give you a little bit more information before we get to the actual video I have to play of a little bit of what's going on. Now, Jeff Sessions is, of course, the Attorney General. He's come out and said that he wants to get very tough on anybody that's a drug offender, a drug trafficker, et cetera, et cetera. He wants people to give the maximum penalties possible in most cases. Now, I agree with that 100%. I've been saying that for a long time. You got to get tough on crime. But before we get into all of that, all of the details and my personal opinion about it, what I want to do right now is go ahead and roll the video. This comes from NBC News. You'll see a guy talk about how he was in jail for an extended period of time and this, that, and the third. And you also see Eric Holder's reaction, who was a former Attorney General. And once we get done with that, we'll come back. We'll talk about the so-called nonviolent drug offenders. And we'll talk about what this actually means for the security of our nation going forward. So without further ado, go ahead and roll it.
When Norman Brown was 22, he received a mandatory life sentence for distributing crack cocaine.
I do deserve to have served some time, but that much? I think that was overkill.
After 24 years, his sentence was commuted by then-President Obama in 2015 as part of his push to roll back what he described as excessive penalties for nonviolent lower-level offenders.
Their punishments didn't fit the crime.
Today, a significant shift back to stricter guidelines.
This is a key part of President Trump's promise to keep America safe. If you are a drug trafficker, we will not look the other way.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions is ordering prosecutors to go after the toughest possible sentences, including those with mandatory minimums, allowing for certain exceptions if approved by a U.S. attorney or assistant attorney general. It reverses Obama-era policies that gave more leeway to prosecutors.
What we'll probably be seeing is increasing prison populations in our federal system.
Civil liberties advocates argue the decision will repeat a failed experiment, with former AG Eric Holder, who implemented the old policy, calling the new one not tough on crime, but dumb on crime. Quote, an ideologically motivated cookie-cutter approach. As for Norman Brown, he hopes the new Attorney General will change his mind.
There are more people like me dying in prison that need to get out and give back.
Okay, so you see what's happening. You see what's going on. You saw that piece. Now, I just want to talk about a few things in the actual piece. Now, first of all, this guy talking about, they were talking about the person that was narrating the story, talking about he had like a life sentence or something like that for dealing crack cocaine. Now, first of all, to anybody listening to my voice, do you think that it was just for cocaine? Do you think that was the only reason, or was he a repeat offender? I'm going to tell you what probably happened. I don't know it for certain or for sure. If you know who that man is, you know what's so rap sheet, please let me know in the comments below. But I seriously doubt that was that man's first offense. First of all, he probably was a multiple time offender, maybe even a 3-strike-er. You know, you get 2 felonies, you get another one, you go to jail for life, regardless of what it is in certain states. So that could have been it. He could have been a violent offender in his past, and then he got caught on the drug charge. He could have also been violent in the case that got him in jail this most recent time, but the only charge that he got convicted for was the drugs, or it could have been other violent crimes he got convicted of with this crime, but the only one they want to mention is the drugs. That happens all the time. People are called nonviolent drug offenders, but they're really very violent people. Some of the most violent individuals you meet in your life are these so-called nonviolent drug offenders. Just like this guy, Wendell Callahan, who was released in 2010 under the Fair Sentencing Act, which was designed to repeal some of the so-called unfair disparities between crack cocaine and powder cocaine sentencing in the 1990s, which we'll get to that in a little bit. But he was released under that rule. Now, just a little while after that, he goes and kills his ex-girlfriend and her 2 kids, not his children, but her 2 kids. Right. So you're talking about a so-called nonviolent drug offender. How nonviolent are you really when you go and kill 3 people as soon as you get out of the penitentiary? Stuff like that always happens. These people that go to jail, a lot of them, if you're talking about drug offenders, if they're in jail for an extended period of time, they probably were a violent person on the streets or somebody that may have become violent or like maybe violent when they need to. They're not just like, Mary Poppins walking around with an umbrella, skipping, handing out crack. That's not how that works. A lot of them, mostly all of them, have gun charges. And that's something kind of contradictory to what's going on here. A lot of the liberals, they'll say, oh, he was nonviolent, he didn't do nothing, give him another chance. But yet the whole gun thing, you want to get tough on guns and you want to try to eliminate guns. But mostly all of them have gun charges, felony gun charges. But you want to just bypass that, only focus on the drugs. A lot of them have sexual offenses. A lot of them have aggravated assault, all kind of stuff. Me personally, I know 20 black men in jail right now. And most of them are not in jail for drugs, but the ones that are in jail for drugs are in jail for big amounts of drugs. You're talking about millions of dollars worth of cocaine, heroin, and stuff like that. Now, these guys are not my besties or nothing like that, but I know of them. I know who they are. I've done business with them in a legitimate sense. Some of them had restaurants and stuff like that, which was something else. I was a flyer guy for a lot of these restaurants. I have no idea what they're doing on the side. When they get locked up, they have a lot of charges that are related to their whole restaurant thing. Money laundering, all kind of, drugs in the school zone, all kind of things that make them get a bigger sentence. It's not just one crime. You can't just say, oh, he was in jail for powder cocaine. That was the only reason. There's usually a bunch of other things that happen at once. And then if it's a federal case, or even if it's like a, local, state or whatever, they'll plead to get a lower sentence. So they can just say, oh, he was in jail for cocaine, even though he pled down to that when he had a whole big mountain charges on his head. That was just a lesser of all of them. But I digress. My point is that I know a lot of people in jail. Nobody's in jail for weed. That's one thing. People reading this story about Jeff Sessions and they're thinking that he's going to put black men in jail for weed. And I'll get to the whole racial thing later. But weed, nobody goes to jail for weed. You don't go to jail for weed. The only way you go to jail for weed is if you violate your terms of your release. If you're on probation or parole, that is it. If you get caught with a joint in your car, you're not going to jail. If you get caught with 10 pounds, you might not go to jail. You might get probation off of that, right? Maybe you will, maybe you won't. You understand what I'm saying? You got to have a large amount of weed and be dealing a lot of it to go to jail for any number of years or however long. Freddie Gray, the infamous Freddie Gray from Baltimore, had been arrested 25 times within a short period of time. He was only like 25 when he passed away in police custody. If the drug laws were so draconian, this, that, and the third, then why was he able to get arrested so many times? Maybe if he got a longer sentence one of those times, then he would not have been arrested all the other times. It'd be a deterrent. That is the whole point behind tough sentencing, is to be a deterrent away from committing these crimes, to be a deterrent away from the proliferation of drugs into our society, which is a big problem. It's happening in a lot of these small towns, New Hampshire, Vermont, etc., and all over the inner city. It never really stopped in the inner city. And that's one more thing I want to talk about, the whole racial element to it. People talking about, oh, it's going to hurt the minorities. I think Rand Paul said something about that, and I'll place the screenshot of the article on the screen before you, and also a link to it in the box below. But he was talking about, oh, it's going to hurt minorities. Why? I mean, are we the only ones that are capable of selling drugs? Are we the only ones that know how to do it? Are we dependent upon drugs to live? Right? And how would it hurt us, even if we are disproportionately arrested for doing it? How would it hurt us when a lot of these people operate in the black community? Like I said before, just because you are a so-called nonviolent drug offender does not mean that you're actually nonviolent. All that means is that you were in jail on a drug offense. That's it. You could have been a very violent person in the street, but the only thing that you got in jail for, the only thing that you're in jail for officially is the drugs. That does not make you nonviolent. Like I said, the guy came home from a so-called nonviolent drug charge and went and killed 3 people, his ex-girlfriend and her 2 children, small children, under the age of 10 each. So that's the whole point. These people pray, and I guarantee you they were all black people that got killed by this man who was also black. That's what I'm talking about. These people come and they terrorize the black community, but that's fine. And you say that locking them up, people that want to pump drugs to the black community, terrorize the black community, create an air of danger to bring some of the most, the dregs of society, child molesters, robbers, murderers, you name it, to these junkie houses, to these trap houses, where other black folks who are just regular people that are just poor, they got to live. To say that eliminating that element is somehow affecting minorities in a negative way does not make any sense. It's just thinking very, on surface level. It's not thinking anything deeper than just a kiddie pool. You got to think just beyond one step. You must think about how these things impact people along the way. And I don't understand why people can't understand that, because one thing I like about Democrats, they're funny. They see statistics when they want to see them, and when they don't want to see them, they don't. And then they'll champion certain things that were caused by things they think are racist, just like the 1994 crime bill. They're all apologetic about it. It's talking about, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it would cause so much harm to the black community, but it didn't really. A lot of black folks got locked up, yes, but the violent crime rate in the black community and in the nation as a whole has been down dramatically since then. And I'll put some actual stats on the screen before you from the Pew Research. And I'll also place a link to that in the box, so you're able to see it for yourself. And like I said, the Democrats talk about how crime is low. Like Republicans, those of us on the right, will say, hey, crime is starting to uptick because a lot of these groups, Black Lives Matter, the Antifa, etc., they're out here creating problems. We need to be able to get them under control, and also the drugs. We got to get harder on the drug sentencing. We got to get harder on the mandatory minimums to be able to protect people that have to live in these areas, and also to reduce the amount of people that become hooked on drugs. We got to be able to try to fight that, because it's a public health issue, a public safety issue. They'll say, well, crime may be going up, but it's at a 20-year low. What happened 20 years ago to make the crime so low, to make the crime go down? What happened? Because it was a spike in the late 80s and early 90s. And then like 1994, 1995, 1996, that's when it started to go down. What happened? It was the crime bill, which was bipartisan, by the way. It was signed in by Slick Willie, but it was a Democrat and Republican effort, and it worked very well. Now they're trying to roll some of those things back that did work, especially for the black community, like the so-called Fair Sentencing Act of 2010. They're trying to put that into existence. They're trying to put that on the books to roll back a lot of the progress we made in the early to mid 90s with trying to reduce crime. Now you're seeing crime start to go up as a result. We're trying to prevent that from going back up to pre-94 levels. And the crazy thing is, people on the left are trying to prevent that from happening. So you got to ask yourself, what side is the left on? Are they on your side, the average person who's just trying to make a living for himself, who's trying to be safe in his own community, who does not want to be surrounded by drugs, gangbangers, sexual offenders, etc., etc.? Or are you on the side of the people that's out there committing the crime? Maybe it's a conspiracy to keep the black areas more dangerous, so they keep voting for the Democratic Party, because somehow it's a link between the Democratic Party and safety when you vote, which doesn't make any sense, because the more we keep voting for the Democratic Party in the black community, the less safe we become. That's just what it is. And then at the end of it, if we can afford to move, we tend to move to a place that's more conservative for our safety. And it's just that simple. So at the end of the day, Rand Paul, this is why you didn't win, sir. You know, when you were first running, I kind of liked you a little bit. I'm like, okay, I like what he's saying. He's not too far of an extremist or whatever, but he has that streak of cuck inside of him that wants to cater for the black community. But people that do that don't even understand what they're doing, really. When you talking about not wanting to have tough drug crimes because it would affect the minority, what minority are you talking about? Like, who specifically are you talking about? Are you talking about black folks in general? Or are you talking about black terrorists that terrorize the black community and then the white community, Asian community, and everybody else? Are you talking about them? Because I don't count them as being part of me. I count them as being those who need to be locked up with the key thrown away, because when they're gone, my life is safer. So why would I try to protect somebody who's gonna make my life more difficult? Why would I try to protect somebody that's going to make life for others more difficult and less safe? It does not make any sense. So that is why you were not able to get over the hump, among other reasons. But that right there, that streak of cuck inside you, many of us saw that within yourself. Mr. Jeff Sessions is on the right track here with trying to become tough on crime. I've been saying that for years. As I close here, I've been saying that for years and years and years. I always get asked the question, how can we improve the black community? How can we make it more safe? How can we reduce the violence? How can we reduce the single parent household rate? It's like, well, look, you got to reduce the welfare state or eliminate it totally. And also you got to get tough on crime. A lot of the criminals in the black community are repeat offenders with a very high recidivism rate. I mean, why not? If you're a criminal, you're thinking to yourself, if I do this crime here, I got Barack Obama on my side with the Fair Sentencing Act. I have sympathetic white liberals on my side that may be in the jury pool. I won't really get locked up like that. If I do, it'll be for a short period of time. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing over and over again. I'm going to keep going to court and telling the same story to get the same sentence. But then if you have a very tough drug policy on the books, that can't happen anymore. And you just got to follow in line with what's really going on. So that's pretty much all I got to say about it. What do you think? Do you think he is a racist for trying to become tough on crime? Jeff Sessions, that is he a racist for that? Is he a racist in general because he comes from Alabama? He has a kind of a Southern accent. Is that why he's racist? If there's another reason that I have not mentioned, please let me know and give me some sources in the box below. I'd love to hear your point of view on why he is a racist, if that's what you think. Or do you think that this is the correct thing to do to get tough on crime? Because when you're not tough on crime, that is when more of it happens. People want to say, are you going to fill up the jails more? Well, maybe not. Maybe the jails won't be filled up more than what they are because people will kind of understand. But you got to understand, like, people don't even understand. They don't give black criminals credit. They think black criminals are retarded. They don't understand that many of them understand the incentive. If you give a dope boy incentive to not commit crime, then maybe he won't do it. If he thinks that if he goes out and do this crime, if he goes out and sell these drugs, and the most he's going to get is 2 months in jail, if he gets any kind of jail time at all, he'll risk that. That's low risk. But if it's like 10 years for the same crime, now you got high risk involved. He's less willing to take those high risks. And I know guys in jail, that's how they think. But who am I? I'm just a guy talking. Whatever your comments are, let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.